All right, guys, we're live. Welcome back to another Monday night live stream. I have one of my favorite people in the world joining me tonight to celebrate the release of her second book. And not a lot of authors make it to a second book, let alone getting published on a first one. Claire is about to do that officially. Claire, how you doing?
Oh man, how am I doing? I have a lot of emotions. And you know that I'm expecting our third baby. And I have to say this time around, doing this while pregnant was like, I don't know. I would never recommend it to anyone. But we're here. We made it. Pushed through. I'm excited. I'm like really excited for people to read the second book and to hear their thoughts on the ending.
Yeah, me too, because the first book is such a deep psychological dive into that kind of lingering question in society of like, what do we all feel about some of these things, and what are the dark consequences and kind of the repercussions of those things, mass shootings and homegrown terrorism and radicalism.
Yep.
And it explores those two characters, so well that you kind of wonder like, well, what could possibly be next? And the New Order really follows that up, and I enjoy it a lot. We're gonna probably drop some spoilers tonight, which is fine. So
I know I was gonna ask how we should do that, because
whatever you want to do.
Okay, have you read it all the way through yet? Not to put you on the spot, because you've got a million other things to do. You did?
I did. I read it all the way through.
Oh my god, I want to hear your thoughts.
I loved it. I thought it was just as good as the first one, maybe even better.
Oh, you did?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I really did.
Because I want to get your, I don't know, should we talk about it? Like, I want to get your take on the ending, and can you tell me your thoughts on how, okay, the first thing I'll say is I actually ended up changing the ending about 2 months before I finished writing it. And I'd always kind of had an idea of how I thought it would go, and then I finally got there and I couldn't do it. Like, I couldn't, I don't know. I feel like I can't say it quite yet because the book's not out.
Yeah, let's not give away the ending for sure.
Yeah, we're not going to give away the ending. But anyways, maybe we'll jump on in a few months after people have had a chance to read it. And then we can kind of like pull it apart.
Yeah, rehash a little bit. But yeah, I thought, because you sent me the first draft back in the fall.
Yeah, and there's been some changes since that.
And then you sent me another draft, which I kind of read through and kind of caught into some of those places that you had adjusted and kind of fine-tuned, and one of those was the ending. I thought you did the ending very well. I thought it was a much better ending, and I'm not saying this in any kind of insulting way. It was much better product and ending from the fall to the spring when you've really worked your way through that ending. And I think... I think for authors, you have to take your time with it. Sometimes it just has to come to you naturally. You see it on the horizon. You just don't know. You don't know how you're going to get there. And it just kind of has to happen organically and not be forced.
Yeah, totally. And, it really just goes to show how, like, you can be super far along in the process and always think you have an idea of what's going to happen. And then, your characters surprise you. And I think really listening to them brings a different layer of authenticity to the book and to the story. And the original ending didn't feel right. Like, it didn't feel like I was doing justice to some of the characters' journeys. And so this felt much better. But it took me a long time. But I think that I felt like I had to get it right also for readers who had been following the story and who were so invested in the characters too. So I'm glad that I did, to your point. Like, I'm glad I let it sit.
Yeah, I think sometimes you need to. I think you really sometimes just need to take a hard look at where it went and ask yourself, well, because, sometimes you write a story and you have that ending in mind. But getting there, you can force it. You can force your way to that ending, and then that changes the way the whole story is. Or you can just organically get towards an ending, and then if you realize the ending needs to change, then you change it.
Yeah.
I don't think you necessarily force it just to have, you know, the ending that you had in mind. I think that's a very stubborn way of writing, and I commend you for putting it down and coming back to it, because
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would have said, maybe been a little more hard nosed about,
Yeah,
sticking
well,
to the
because I
script.
mean, if you think about some people's processes, like some people write the whole book knowing that end, or it's almost like they kind of outline everything so rigidly that I think sometimes it's hard to be pliable with the writing when at times it might need to, or it might be why a lot of authors really struggle with like the middle and the saggy middle, is because if you can have a rock star start and know it's going to be a rock star finish, but like how you get to point A and B is obviously such a critical part of it. So that's
I like what you said about pliable. I think that's
yeah,
a very good
good
word.
adjective.
Yeah, pliable is really good because, when I first started writing fiction, that was my goal, was to be very rigid and very structured. I'm a very structured and organized person in my professional life, so my goal was to stick to an outline and be disciplined in writing through that outline and getting progress done. And I felt I wrote a whole book that way,
Yeah,
and I didn't love it.
yeah,
I felt like I was trying to force too many certain scenes, too many certain things to happen at a certain time. It was way too structured. It didn't flow organically from page 1 to 450, And when I let go and I said, what is happening in Act 1 that's important, that flows into Act 2, that's important, that flows into Act 3? When I hit kind of those time marks, 4 or 5
yeah,
big points in the book, then you just kind of get to from here to there, then from there to there, and then you kind of know, Act 1's not going to end the way I thought it would. I need
yeah,
to fast forward it a chapter or two and then pick up, and then just you let the keys and your mind just kind of get you there, because and I don't really think a lot of authors are super super rigid in their outlines. I think I know of a couple, but I think a lot of them have a degree of outlining, and then they just let the rest of it go through the writing and they get there.
yeah. And I think I'd almost like lose interest if I've been to a couple of conferences and listened to a few panels where some people were like, I have to have the whole outline, like almost like 30,000 to 40,000 word outlines done before I can even start to write it. So, but I think you're so right that I bet it's pretty typical for first time authors to feel like you have to be super rigid with it in order for it to work. And there's all these rules that you have to follow or that you can't break.
Yeah.
And so I feel like so much of that is discovering your own voice, which is so critical, beyond just like breaking out of that outline structure, and it like gaining confidence in your voice, because as we know, it's just so hard to not beat yourself up over every sentence sometimes, or like this, like the shitty first draft that you're like, this just sucks. Um, and like once you start to realize, okay, that's actually just a critical part of the process, is getting down the shitty first draft and knowing that you got way more drafts ahead of you. I feel like that also like alleviates some of that pressure and allows you to like expand,
I could see where like a police procedural or a really deep crime story would need to be very structured, because
Yeah.
you not only have the plot and probably like a subplot, but you also have, clues along the way. And you're dragging along the reader in kind of an investigative manner. So I could see where that would need to be. And I have kind of a project like that I've been working on, and I struggle with kind of putting it together because of that very reason. Is you have to put the clues in there. You know what's going to happen, but the main character can't and doesn't. They're trying to figure it out, and you got to let the reader try to figure it out with them. So I can see where the crime procedural, even legal thriller where there's there's almost an intensive intention to where every chapter and every page reveals something new on purpose.
Yeah.
That feels like it might be a little more structure.
Necessary.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of my favorite authors that I follow, Jessica Knoll, she did her most recent book that came out was kind of like a Ted Bundy, like not like, it was kind of like a spin-off of it, or it was like inspired by the Ted Bundy case. And she recently posted about how, like, if you get to that like third act or further along in the book and you get stuck, you really have to like go back and evaluate future scenes, because if you're stuck here, it's because something went wrong here. And so, to your point, like, especially for those kind of crime novels, if those clues aren't adding up, and you can't, and you're not getting, like you said, the characters and the readers to the point where you need them to, then something went wrong early, you know?
Well, then you have to plan a twist. You have to plan a twist in there. It can't just
it can't be predictable.
Yeah. You can't just get there and be like, oh, crime solved. Like, there's got to be that twist in there, or multiple twists that kind of, or that illusion of a twist that throws people off. And I think that's where people in the mystery and kind of that crime procedural drama do it the best, is they allude to a twist, and they make you think it's coming up. And they make you think of the twist, and you're predicting it. And
then you're so distracted predicting it.
Yes, and you're completely wrong.
Yeah.
And they're escorting you over here on purpose to get you away from what's really happening. And the really, really good ones, like Jennifer Rose, she does it really, really well of getting you to look over here, and then at the last second she shifts you right over here and says, actually it was this. And then you're just, and she's the only author that can trick my wife. Shannon can watch a TV show and within the first 3 minutes have it figured out. She does the same thing with books, and I'm like, just shut up and don't ruin it for me. Okay? Like, don't.
I actually am pretty good at it with TV shows too, where I'm like, oh, this is going to happen. And Justin's like, no. And then I'm like, just wait. And then it does.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's like, you're right, like our training. But is that, so Geneva Rose, is she the one who wrote, she's the one who wrote the most recent one that you're listening to? Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, she wrote The Perfect Marriage, and then she just put out The Perfect Divorce.
Yeah, so is it kind of like a sequel to that?
Yeah, so
okay.
In a nutshell, at the end of the first book.
I have the first book. I think I might really try to read it this summer because I want to.
So at the end of the first book, you know, her marriage falls apart and other things happen that kind of allude to, oh, she's going to start a new life. Try not to spoil it for you. So you kind of get the idea that, oh, she's going to be married and maybe start a new life. And then what the second book is about that new marriage. And and some twists from the past coming back, and some new things that I kind of saw coming, like, oh, I saw that was definitely a possibility. But I've read several of her books so far, and you think you might know what's going to happen, and you're wrong. You know, it's just...
I love that.
Yeah, you got to listen to the audiobook, because she has it from two points of view, from the view from the husband and the view from the wife. And it's two different audio narrators, so you kind of get that
cool.
that dramatic back and forth. So, yeah, it was really good.
A lot of people asked me if we were going to do that with mine, because of...
That would have been cool.
It would have been cool with Flynn and Wolf.
Mm-hmm.
But it would have been pricey. Would have been expensive.
Yeah. What was it like?
Maybe when I can sell a bunch of books on TikTok like Geneva Rose did.
Right. Yeah. We need to sell 1 million of them and then redo the audio. Yeah. What was it like for you diving back into Flynn and Wolf after kind of taking a break and life kind of evolving, and then sitting down and saying, okay, it's time for number 2, because you took a little bit of a break in between the two. What was it like kind of diving back in?
Well, so I took a break, but I'd actually started writing the second book pretty shortly after I finished the first book and was in the process of trying to get an agent. And then once I got an agent, going on submission. So the only thing I really could do during that time was start to write the second book, and at that time, it actually thought that this series was going to be a trilogy. So, so much of the second book had come to me while I was finishing the first. And at that time, I actually still lived in Chicago. I was still working for Google. I think I had while I was starting to write, while I first began the second book, I had just had William. So William's my oldest. He's 5, for those of you who don't know. But then COVID happened. And the city shut down. And so I got a lot of inspiration for the vibe of Chicago in its current state in the second book from being in a similar situation, living like a big urban city that was like a ghost town.
Yeah.
Which was just so eerie. It's something I'll just never forget. And then the long story short, I kind of took a pause on the second book because I had to redirect my attention back to the first because we were getting it ready for publication, and then and then blah, blah, blah. And then I think one of the things that I really struggled with being a debut author was that like, it took so much time and energy to promote the first book. And that was so demanding that like, it took me like 3, almost 4 months before I like could get back into writing and realize like, I need to finish this book, the second book, because it's all you can really do, it's just like, keep writing and keep putting stuff out there.
Yeah.
And at that time, by that point, it felt I really missed them and I was ready and I felt like I knew them even better, especially because of how much work went into like, you know how it gets when you're finished with your book and the story and you're like, I can't look at this anymore. I hate it because you've read it so many times and you've overanalyzed every single word. And so at that point, I was so ready to have like the creative challenge of actually writing again instead of editing. And some people I know are like big editors and that's the stage they love. They hate the first draft stage, but like, that's what I love, is I love the creative outlet of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I don't like the second guessing part of editing.
Yeah, I hate it.
Like, did I think of this? Like this is,
Yeah.
I know this paragraph right here leads back into a chapter 10 chapters from now. Did I think of this? And then you fast forward and you kind of question yourself as a plotter and you're just like,
yes,
did I do that or not? And that's what I hate
like,
about
get
editing.
like so wrapped up in like, if I change a word, then I'm like, okay, but did I use that word like up earlier in this page or below? So then you have to like reread the whole page. And that's usually by the end of it when you're like, finishing your copy edits and your proof edits and whatnot. But you kind of like go crazy because you're like, but it's true. Like it helps to have something, it helps to have it all down and then to be able to like refine it and polish it. I do enjoy to some extent. But then other times I'm just like, I get bored.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
in the new order, which drops tomorrow,
yeah, baby.
Chicago has fallen. And now Flynn is kind of that unwilling accomplice in the city's takeover by Reds. And I'm reading this off of Amazon. That way I don't screw it up. And I don't give away anything.
I was going to say, nailed it.
Yeah, I'm reading it right off of her. But a meeting kind of goes awry, and then Flynn finds herself in the path of a familiar face, and then she's once again kind of flung into that troubled partnership. How did you kind of elevate this one and move on to the next phase of Reds and the next phase of Wolf? So we saw that kind of that new face of both Wolf and Flynn.
Ooh, those are great questions. Okay. So by the time I got back to writing the second book, I made sure and worked with my editors to really plant a lot of seeds about Reds and the direction Reds was going in the first book. so if you go back and read it carefully, it was very clear the intention. And in the first book, you're really getting to know what the organization is, what they stand for, their recruitment, the psyche behind it. And you know what they want to do, but you don't really know why or how they're going to do it. And so that's basically where the second book, everything becomes crystal clear. And even, I'm trying to think about how I want to say this without spoiling things. I would say even both Wolf and Flynn have been in the dark about some of Red's motives to some extent. Now, a part of that is because of how the first book ended, and we can kind of see Spider and Wolf on thin ice. And with Flynn, she doesn't know where she stands with Wolf, especially with how it ended, how that part ended. So I think a big part of that elevation is seeing how they discover kind of like almost a parallel pathing, like the true motives behind what's happening with Reds. Does that make sense?
It does.
I have to be like, I know you know what I'm talking about, but
yeah, very good job of dancing around.
Yeah, I had to dance
the true answer
quite plainly about it, because there's a lot of, I feel like what I will say too is like a lot of questions are answered pretty early on in the first book. I think you'd agree. In the second book. And so a lot of questions are answered, but then there's quite a few twists that like you don't really see coming that open up a whole new gate or world of problems for Wolf in particular, which completely changes the direction of his character arc. I would say Flynn is like on the same path.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
But she's changed by the death of her best friend. Sorry, spoiler for people who haven't read the first book. So that kind of changes her trajectory and her approach and her mentality. And then new knowledge that Wolf gains changes his. So it's like you see Flynn changing direction and you see Wolf changing direction, and you kind of have to see how they're going to collide and intersect.
And they do collide.
They do.
They do collide, and it gets pretty interesting.
What did you think? There is, now we don't know who it's between. There's a spicy scene in this one.
Bravo, by the way.
About who it's with, because everybody wants to know, like, okay, who's it with? But like, what do you think about that? Like,
I thought it was really well done.
Okay, that was very hard to do.
I know, right?
Have you ever written one before? Like, that was like my first spicy scene that I like wrote.
Yeah, but I wrote it. It was more of a lead up, and then it was like a paragraph of.
Yeah. So like, you didn't really go into it.
No. I kind of let it up like there was the tension was there, and then it was like a paragraph of basically kissing, and then closed door. What happens next.
Yeah, so it's a closed door. You did a closed door, yeah.
Yeah, like I didn't get to, not like my wife's books. That
I was going to say, Shannon has to read this one because she's going to be the real, if I did, like, I got to hear what she thinks of it.
Oh, it's very mild compared to some of the spicy books that she gets that are sitting on the bookshelves in our house right now. It's very mild. Like,
there are so many good Instagram reels about that, about like husbands like finding the spicy scenes of their wives' books, and it's so good.
I wouldn't even say it's spicy. It is downright like.
It's smut. It's like smutty stuff.
Man, is it? It is. Man, is it? Mind-blowingly dirty. Like, yeah. Some of these women need help.
Love it. Listen,
they do. Oh my God, it makes so much money. It makes outrageous amounts of money. They sell thousands of copies.
I know.
Of special edition books, and they have special edition boxes and gift sets, and like it goes crazy. I am blown away.
Yeah, it is. It's its own. It's its own
thing. Own following. Yeah,
it's totally its own. Like there's even bookstores just devoted to it. And
really. Wow.
Yeah. hmm there's a few. I think there's like one in Chicago, one in Charleston. I mean, it's not just kind of like some of the smut, but it's like romance in general. And
Mm,
I think if you're going to categorize yourself as a romance author, there is a certain expectation about including some sort of physical, of course, chemistry
sure.
element to
But I
it.
think
You know?
there's a ceiling
Yeah, there's
where
lines.
romance goes up to, and then it
Yeah.
peaks, and then after that it gets, I guess it gets hot and sweaty, I would say.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it gets
I
another
mean, that's
level.
why like romantasy is such a big thing right now, is because I mean, the cult following of those is like crazy. Crazy, crazy.
I read
And I started
50
reading some
Shades.
of them,
Did
and
you?
some of them are, yeah. But some of them are a little bit too fantasy for me.
Yeah, I'm not a fantasy guy at all.
Yeah, I'm
I
like, I
can't do it.
can't.
I don't even like watching Harry Potter. Like, it
Oh
just,
no! Oh my God, I love that. I love
no.
that, and I actually do really like watching it. That's a good. Well, to some extent, like I don't love like the Lord of the Rings, but I love Game of Thrones. But is that fantasy? I don't know. Game of Thrones is weird.
Oh no. I mean, I guess Lord of the Rings is a little fantasy and a little bit kind of the medieval. It's a good
Yeah.
balance. Um, Harry Potter to me, and I'm not knocking Harry Potter, so I don't want people coming
Yeah.
at me in the comments.
Yeah. You're gonna come at you.
Yeah, I'm gonna get canceled for saying this.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just, it is too fantasy magic to me. It's just,
Mhm.
it's not my. I see why it's popular. I see why so
Yeah.
many people like it. I not
Did your
knocking it at
kids read
all.
it?
They did. I mean, everybody in my house loves Harry Potter except for me.
Yeah. Well, Justin loves it, but he loves the movies. He's never read the books.
Mm.
And I was like I loved Harry Potter. And I think that I always thought I'd write like science fiction or fantasy when I was like dreaming of becoming an author at a young age. And because those were the
Really?
books that I loved and gravitated toward. But now it's just changed so much. And I don't know why that is. And it's interesting because whenever I talk to fantasy authors, I always say I don't know how you do it because the world building element is so intense
Yeah, it
and
can't
you
be.
need such a vivid imagination that
Hmm.
really knows no boundaries. But then they say the opposite. They're like, I don't know how you do it because I can't imagine writing in such a constrained world of like our reality, you know?
Yeah, yeah, but like in like a regular, let's just talk traditional thriller or maybe like a military thriller.
Yeah.
You can, it's almost, I don't want to downgrade it or anything, but it's almost easier to build the world in it because you have the Pentagon, you have the White House, you
Mhm.
have military bases. You can reference all those things and then put a character and a made up unit in that generalized world. So
Yeah.
half of the fiction is
hmm
fact made
Yes.
present for you,
Which
whereas
is what I like too. I
yeah,
like that's what I need.
it's yeah, it's very easy to build your world around existing fact,
Yeah.
and kind of blending those lines, and it kind of lends authenticity to the story. Whereas
hmm
I think in the fantasy world, you are literally starting from scratch and you're building
Yeah.
it all up. Because can you imagine? Could you imagine writing Game of Thrones yourself? It's not just the characters; it's the worlds,
The
it's the
histories.
culture. The yes, all that you have to have all that in the
Yeah.
book. You have
Yeah.
to, and people gotta feel that. I think that's what they're expecting, and I think that's
Yeah.
I don't know how
And
I
like
don't know how they do it.
languages. Like
Yeah,
I went and I went at our high school. I went and spoke to like it was their creative writing club, and there were some of these kids were like extraordinary already. And one of the girls was like, "Oh yeah, I've written the whole book in my own language." And like I'm not laughing because it's not. I'm just like I
wow,
was like I didn't know what to say because
yeah,
I was like, how are you going to transcribe that? Like, who's
yeah.
else to be able to read it? But like, that's how in into her own world or invested in this world that she created it was, where she had literally created a whole language and then written a book in that language.
Mm,
And I mean, like, I was definitely stretched with the New Order because it is a dystopian Chicago, and that was it was so much harder than writing the Rising Order, because I did have to have, in some degree, a lot more world building than I did with the first book, because you have to create this city that's essentially run by by terrorists. So,
speaking of getting immersed in things, what are you guys binge watching right now?
oh, okay, we're two things. Well, this is kind of funny because this isn't fantasy, but is it? The Last of Us, which is now back on HBO.
Yep.
You watch that one?
Mm-hmm. Did you
Do
watch
do you play video games? Do you play the video game?
I've been known to dabble on the PlayStation 5 every now and then.
Justin's but Justin doesn't play those. Justin plays like the Call of Duties and stuff.
Yeah, me too. I like to get on the weekends and just blow off some steam by, making fun of
Justin.
13-year-olds.
That's how he socializes and hangs with his friends. And, yeah.
There's nothing better than playing your kids in video
right?
games and just beating them up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you guys do you. Justin does that while I enjoy my Bravo TV shows.
Yeah.
Okay, that's how I blow off my steam and decompress. And then, so The Last of Us, and then The Pit on HBO. We're really into right now.
Is that
the medical show? It's so good.
Yeah, that's the one that the Crichton estate tried to have shut down because it was so similar to ER. And it was almost like a reboot of ER. And the Crichton estate has rights to that. So they were trying to stop it from coming out, and rightfully so. So let me back up a little bit. The plot was close enough to ER that they were like, hold on, we have rights to that. And then they kind of went through this whole thing of trying to negotiate and blah, blah, blah. And I guess it was Universal or whatever the big company was behind it, kind of pressed forward and kind of got their way in an injunction or whatever. I don't remember all the facts of it, but I just remember the Crichton estate was kind of like, hold the phone here. That's way too similar to ER, which we still own that property because Michael Crichton was the producer and wrote it.
I didn't know that Michael Crichton wrote that.
Yeah, Michael Crichton, he's one of my favorite authors. Like Michael Crichton, I love him.
Yeah,
He wrote
brilliant.
a lot of television shows that you would not imagine that he was involved in. A lot of people know him because of Jurassic Park and Congo.
Yeah, that's how I know him. Mm-hmm.
But he was involved in a lot of television shows, especially ER. I know.
I never watched ER, so I can't, but I can see that. And it's interesting because I haven't started watching. Apparently there's The Pulse that released on Netflix, which just seems like it's kind of like a similar ER focused show. So it's like The Pulse and The Pit that are both out on. But yeah, that's interesting. It's super good too. I mean, and apparently a lot of doctors have been like, it's very accurate. Other than the lack of charting and certain mundane.
Yeah, there's a certain someone who's sitting downstairs on the couch right now going over charts and notes on her iPad.
Yeah.
Because she's
Shannon.
behind.
That's what so many of the doctors were like, they're definitely not doing the extent of what you need to do in that area. But
No, she doesn't work a typical 8-hour shift. I mean, she's putting in several hours every night, and that's why we binge watch a lot. We've been watching The Last of Us, and we just watched the last episode.
We need to talk about that then first. Well, I want to hear what else you guys are watching, but we do need to talk about that.
Yeah. And we've been watching The Handmaid's Tale, the new season of that.
Yeah, I haven't watched any of those seasons. I can't.
Oh, big fan of Handmaid's Tale.
I've heard. I mean, people who love it, but it's just it's a little too close to home for me right now. Yeah,
it's well, in the later seasons, it's they get away.
This is the last season too, right?
Yeah, and then we finished the last season of You last night.
Yeah. Okay, I haven't watched You, but I've been curious about dabbling in it. Would Justin like that one?
Yeah, I think so. If he likes kind of the psychological drama, what they do really good is they get behind the main character and he's kind of the narrator of the story. So, there'll be scenes where he's just kind of like looking at a book, and then he's narrating. He's talking to you out loud, his thoughts, and you really kind of get in the mind behind him and realize how disturbed of an individual he is. And then how he flashes back where he's the typical husband and, smiling, and then, but you just know behind closed doors, he's plotting, he's got these thoughts in his head. It's just a really good psychological drama based off of a book, but it's pretty good. They did a really good job.
It ended. So did you like how it ended, or did you know how it was going to end? Because has Shannon read the books?
No.
Okay.
I have the first book, but I haven't read it yet, and I thought they did a good job of ending it and kind of coming full circle the way I think they should, to kind of imprison someone who, took so many lives and wanted so badly to have a partner, but want it his way, and still be trapped with those feelings and those urges.
Oh, I want to watch that. I think I'm going to. You just inspired me. That was a good recap. Good summary.
Yeah. I really liked that. I'm sad that it's over, but I think it was, it's good. I think it's 5 seasons, and, it ran its course. I think they were going to eventually run out of ways of doing things. So it was good that it was kind of like the 5th season was kind of a recap in a lot of ways, leading up to what was going to eventually happen. And I thought they did a good job of it. Really good. Not like, it's not as dead spot on like The Last of Us is to the
I've
video
heard
game.
that one follows it to a T.
Wow. Like,
that was insane. I obviously haven't played, I don't, Justin got it spoiled, so he was really upset, because there were just so many spoilers after, and I think I was saved because I wasn't on social media that much last week because I was so busy. There was so much to do before the book came out. So I went into it totally blind. I had no idea. I was like, this is the 2nd episode? What is going on?
I know. Yeah.
It was wild.
Any other show would deviate for the purpose of knowing you can't do this in the 2nd episode. You're going to potentially lose people for the rest of the season, and then those people will fall off for season 3.
Yeah.
And they probably will, just because people who haven't played the video game or have no idea of the video game don't know how closely to the story they are staying. To a point where, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody who's listening and hasn't watched, but to a point where they did what they did, where I would say 99% of Hollywood producers would not dare do that, because you're ending the show.
Yeah.
It was such a pivotal point, but it stayed.
But why do you think that, real quick? Do you think that because of who the character was?
Yeah, the character and the actor.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just.
Yeah,
he's a big deal right now.
Yeah.
And then you do what you do, and then you don't necessarily have him moving forward. It's not going to be the last that we see of him, but it is. So that's a big gamble for a franchise show, but they're staying so true to the game that it's impressive.
I love that, though. I love that.
I
I respect that. And I'm getting a lot of parallels from The Walking Dead. Were you into The Walking Dead? I loved it.
I loved it too.
I stopped watching it, but
I can't remember where we stopped watching it, but it got to a point where it was just after Negan revealed himself, and I want to say
it was Alexandria. We stopped watching him around the Alexandria, and a lot of the characters were gone that you were so invested in from the very beginning.
Yeah.
But I think that was a little different because there were truly multiple of the main characters that were killed off or off the show.
Yeah.
But I felt a lot of parallels between that scene with Glenn and Negan. Did you at all? Did that come up? And I don't know.
Yeah, it was definitely that.
Like the brutality of it. You know.
Yeah, it was definitely that coming of age moment where, you know, you kind of said, how's he going to get out of this? Is he going to get out of this? Even though I kind of knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, it was like they still did a really good job of, I think, spinning it up and allowing you to really kind of question, like, oh, is he going to get out of this? What's going to happen? There's no way they're going to do what I think they're going to do.
Yep.
You know, whereas I think the stuff with Negan and Glenn was a little more shocking.
Oh, you do? You think it was more shocking?
I think so.
Oh, I don't think so.
Because I didn't see that coming.
I was like so utterly like, like that just happened. Like
I was more shocked that they stuck to it and that they actually did it. I thought they can't afford to do what they're going to do. There's no way.
I thought Abby was going to have like a change of heart, like in that scene, like when they were in the house.
Nope.
I don't know. Nope.
Nope.
Nope. But I do love, like, and this is where, you know, with like, I mean, as you can see from my writing with Wolf, like, I love anti-hero stories like this, where it's like, you know, oh, damn, we can't talk about it. Because I don't want to
You can spoiler if you want to.
Okay, spoiler alert, stop. If you haven't seen the second episode of
Pause.
Stop listening or just pause or fast forward. But with you, like, Abby made it really clear why she killed him.
Yep.
And like, who wouldn't if they were in Abby's position?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, again, having no background in the video game, I was shocked the last episode, the season finale of the first season, that he did literally kill like everybody.
Yeah.
And I was like, I remember turning to Justin and just being like, I mean, I thought that he was going to stop at some point, but he didn't. He just like kept plowing through people.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you know why she did it. You can empathize with her position. I kind of wish there had been more dialogue between Abby and Pedro. What's Pedro's characters? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, like, I wish there had been... I want to go back. I really want to go back and rewatch the scene because I was so, like, engrossed and, like, shocked and, like, there were so many things happening.
Yeah.
But, like, I'm glad that she kind of, like, explained herself.
Yeah. Well, you need to go to YouTube and see if you can see the side-by-side of the game versus the show.
Really?
And how close they did it. Like,
that's insane!
Even the dialogue is almost perfect. Like,
really?
Mm-hmm, it's really close. Like,
so do you know how it's going to end, the whole thing?
Yeah, I guess I do. I've kind of forgot a little bit, if I'm being honest. Because I don't have a great memory when it comes to... My wife could remember it. Shannon can remember things that are absolutely irrelevant that happened 15 years ago. I'm like, what? Why did you remember that? Like, I don't know.
It does sound like a woman thing.
I can't recall like that well, but she probably knows. But I mean, that's what that kind of is the beauty of being me. Sometimes is like I'm surprised because I didn't remember.
Yeah.
So I'm always surprised.
How wonderful and blissful to be a man who just like whoop, it goes in and out. Like, no, I hold on to things, and Justin gets so annoyed with me because like I am the person who I have to pause it, like I have to, or I rewind. I'm like, oh, I didn't hear that, and he's like, it's just a piece of dialogue. Like, they're just talking. I was like, no, I have to know everything they said, and like. Whereas he can like walk in and out, like get a snack, go to the bathroom. I'm like, you're gonna miss it. Like what? Like I can't do that. Like I have to be like, I got to
do that too. I have to. If I'm gonna get up, I gotta pause it and then I come back.
Yeah.
You know, but my wife will just get up.
Though? Like if I miss something, I'm like, I have to rewind it and rewatch it.
No, Shannon does.
Okay.
Shannon will, but she does it because she's not paying attention in the first damn place. And I'm like, hey,
I do that too.
put your phone down and pay attention. We wouldn't have to do this. It's an hour and a half episode.
Okay.
It's taking us 3 hours to finish because you're doing all these other things. Like just sit down and watch, focus, and
yeah, I do that too. I do that too. Guilty.
yeah. So, but yeah, you need to watch the side by side.
Okay, I'm
of
going
that
to.
episode of The Last of Us because you're going to be like blown away at how close they got it.
I haven't watched the most recent episode yet. How did it make you feel?
I don't think I've watched it either. We finished.
Okay,
we were finishing You, and I don't think I've watched the one that I think it came out last night.
Yeah, because it came out last night. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we haven't watched it yet.
Okay, we can recap that one and digest. Did
Yeah.
you watch The White Lotus this season?
No, I couldn't really get into that. Shannon watched it, but I haven't really.
Yeah.
I watched it.
Did she like it? What did she think about this season?
She loves it.
Okay.
She loves White Lotus. I think I watched part of the first season with her. And it was okay. It's just I never fully like.
Yeah. The first season was good. I loved the second season. I thought the second season was brilliant. And then this season, it wasn't great. I personally think. It got a lot of flack. I think it was a really, really slow burn and build. I did like the ending. It was a very Mike White ending. Where all the pieces finally came together, but I don't think I was invested enough in the characters to care as much about the ending.
Okay.
As like I was invested in the characters in season 2. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so what is next for Claire? Because I know this is kind of, I don't want to say the end because I'm hoping that you'll scrounge together a book 3 in the future.
Yeah.
But
I'm definitely not saying no to that for sure.
Good, because I want to see the trilogy kind of come to an end. But what else is saved on a hard drive? What else are you working on?
Well, you and I have chatted about this at length at 𝐬𝐻'𝐿, but it's going to be a total divergence from what I'm working on now. And I think that is because I'm in a different phase of life that I want to explore. And it's going to be a lot more of like a juicy drama. So it's going to be a juicy drama meets okay, so I'll just talk about it openly. But it's going to be called Golf Wives, as you know. You've heard about this a lot. But it'll be kind of like a Big Little Lies meets Netflix Full Swing documentary. So which follows golfers around and really shows more into their process and their psychology of the sport and their family lives and how that influences the game. And my husband's a really big golfer. And so all of this kind of came together for me and inspired this next book. And I might go in the psychological thriller direction with it. That's one thing I still haven't really decided. But there will be a lot of like manipulation, a lot of scandal, all kind of is set in this like country club, golf club setting, which is just ripe for examination and tearing apart. And I'm so excited to do it. And I feel like I'm just ready to do it. Like that's kind of, I'm really interested to see like after this project, if I'll go back to kind of the thriller action, stories that I have loved and that to me keep the pages turning and keep you riveted. So I think I will really miss that while writing this. Like I can't fall back on action to move the story forward. It's going to have to be a lot of other character conflict that I'm going to have to explore.
Well, I think you could probably still sprinkle in some action because, you know, there's always those emotional moments where people act irrationally. Maybe they grab a beer bottle.
Yeah.
They break a beer bottle, they hold a golf club a certain way. You use that kind of that action to maybe
Tension.
ramp up the tension without getting
Mm-hmm.
too bloody or any gunshots. I think you
True.
might be able to do it a little. I don't
More
know if
subtly.
a little more subtly.
Yeah.
You won't veer too far away from it as you think, because I think you can still do a lot of action and a lot of page turning without, because just leaving it off. Like, you grabbed the beer bottle and he broke it and he had it to the guy's throat, and you just don't know what's going to happen. What's going to happen next?
That's true.
That's action.
That's true, Jeff. Thank you. I needed that.
So,
and I will say, like, I think you would agree too that the Rising Order and the New Order are very character driven. So although there's a lot of action, they're still very,
you're in the shoes differently than other books where you don't necessarily get that POV so intimately, and I think, going back to when you first wrote it and you were working with Ryan and he told you to kind of flip the whole book on its head and do it by those POVs, kind of a groundbreaking revelation that I think really paves the way for the story, because not that you didn't write it well the first way, but by doing it you immerse the reader right there in the shoes and you give them no other choice but to be invested.
100%. And one thing that would we call Gone Girl a psychological thriller? Yeah, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. One thing I loved about Gone Girl that's always stuck with me is how you never knew who was the good guy or the bad guy.
Yes.
And I think
that's
what I want to play around with a lot in this book. Flawed characters who both fuck up, but then who is to blame, or is either to blame, or like how did they get there, or who's the bad guy / woman. And I love that exploration. I even kind of played, I think, around with that in the Rising Order and the New Order too, to some extent, but with more chemistry between the characters, whereas this is going to be different. This is going to be kind of like, rather than like what brings characters together, this is going to be what drives them apart.
Right, but those same things that drive them apart also drive people together. Money, lust, partying, some emotions, you're going to...
Ego,
like, power.
Power. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it sounds really cool. I'm curious to see what the initial draft starts to look like, because
I know
it sounds like a fun story, a fun journey to go on. It sounds very Desperate Housewives kind of.
Yeah. I mean, I love a good Housewives. So I love
a good drama. I love a good drama. Just
same. I was gonna say, but are you still gonna feature Golf Wives on Course of Action?
Mm-hmm.
It's just gonna be different.
Of course.
I will say I am a little curious, because I feel like I've met so many friends in the thriller space who are like, have become so near and dear and close to me. And I'm like, am I going to be able to fit in with this new book? You know what I mean? Into the, like, how I'm going to have to figure out how and that's why I think a part of me is a little tempted to make it a little bit psychological thriller-esque, because I was like, I can't leave my peeps behind. I love my friends so much that I've come to know and that have been such an integral part of the journey that I've embarked on since the Rising Order came out.
Well, I think a thriller is a thriller. There's many different subgenres, and I think what people are doing today is blurring the lines between those subgenres and sprinkling in a little bit of a lot of things. And I think it appeals to broader audiences, and you want to do that because you want to loop in some people who maybe didn't read the Rising Order and haven't read the New Order, but with Golf Wives, you'll catch a new audience, and then you'll introduce them to your other side and your other audience, and then vice versa. And I think you would be shocked, and if you talk to Ryan, he would tell you the same thing. You'd be shocked at the amount of people that are working on projects right now that are not their traditional projects.
Yeah.
Because the industry right now is demanding new content. It's not demanding long-running series like the Brad Thors and the Mark Greenies and these guys that are on their 20th something book, James Patterson and all that. Like, those guys are who they are, and they're the staples because they've proven that they could do that, but they also came and cut their teeth 20 years ago where a series was all we had. Yeah. Today, attention spans are not like that, so they brought their audience forward, but new audiences are clamoring for new things. So you might not get that third and fourth book in today's publishing. You've got to start working on other things and really showcase your chops as a writer, because there's a demand for content, but not the same old stuff. So what are you doing to twist it up so that you not only keep your audience and maybe introduce them to something different, but you grab that new audience and then kind of pull them in and introduce them to something you had previously worked on. So I think it's good that you're doing that. I know it's something that I've been given a lot of advice on, and I've been working on a lot of different things.
Really?
Because...
Well, I know that you've been working on other things too, because, you're right. Like, as you can never write to a trend. I don't think that's possible. But if an industry is demanding something and telling you, okay, you have to examine X, Y, and Z, I think that's how, to your point, exactly, like, you need to be able to show your range. I do think that was such a good point you made. And show, like, okay, I can come up with some different stuff. I can step outside my comfort zone. And at this point, I feel like the 2 books that I may have spent like 9 years on, like, I'm ready. And you're like the perfect example of someone who consumes so much different content that you can do it too.
Yeah, and I think for me, not that we're talking about me tonight, we're talking about you, but
I know, but I love talking about you too.
I think for me, I grew up loving sci-fi books. I fell in love with reading when not just from The Hunt for Red October, which is a very traditional military spy thriller, and it's considered one of the top 5, but it was Jurassic Park. It was Michael Crichton and that storytelling, so my family didn't have a lot of money. So I entertained myself often with paper, pencils, cardboard boxes. We didn't have a ton of toys. I had an army bucket, that plastic bucket full of army men. I would shoot outside a lot because my parents were always working. Yeah. I had to entertain myself, so I had a very wild imagination. So for me, that kind of sci-fi level of entertainment really appeals to me. So Jurassic Park, I could watch it today. I could watch it all the way through and enjoy it like I did the first time I watched it. Because it just did something that it turned childhood dreams, and everybody loves dinosaurs. And then you just think, but we'll never see dinosaurs because it'll never happen. And then all of a sudden this guy makes a movie about it. No shit, dinosaurs running around. You get to see them. You get to hear the roars and see the teeth and all that stuff. Yeah. For me, that's maybe that's what appeals to me a little bit more. I love military stuff. I love blowing things up and all that. I love James Bond movies and all that. But I think what I really have fun with is dipping into the unknown a little bit,
Yeah.
and playing around with science just a
Yeah.
little bit, and I'm working on something now that I'm about 30,000 words into that is it's my
Dang.
Jurassic Park.
Oh, that is so cool. I love hearing that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, you are a person too who, and I do think this plays into it. Like you know so much about almost everything. I mean, it's why I come to you all the time, not only as my weapons expert, but to talk like politics and political and international affairs and the US government. And you are one of the only people who is so neutral about it. Like,
Well,
facts
I think I've told
based.
you this a bunch of times. Like, it's about seeing through the BS. Like,
Yeah.
perfect example. The news today and yesterday were showing images from the Pope's funeral.
Yeah.
And they scaled down the photo to just show Trump and some of the other foreign dignitaries. And everybody's wearing a black suit except for him. He's wearing a Navy suit. And then the headline was,
Oh,
they
no.
they ask everybody to wear a black suit, and Trump defiantly wears a Navy suit.
Yeah.
What they don't tell you, and this is what pisses me off about the media,
Mm-hmm.
if you zoom out on that picture,
Mm-hmm.
tons of Navy suits
Yeah.
from dignitaries and world leaders all over the world. It
Yeah.
wasn't him. And I'm
Yep.
not defending him specifically. I'm defending the scenario
No, absolutely.
and saying,
And like we've talked about how the headlines, it's like the grabbing the headlines,
yes,
the clickbait, and like you and I have said this over and over to each other, and that it just feels very tabloidy. And the danger, as we've discussed with the media going in this direction, is that people lose faith in those outlets as a source of truth because people don't know what to believe anymore. And that's
and
what's really scary.
just going online and looking at another article about the Pope's funeral, and I saw it for myself. Like, he wasn't the only one wearing Navy. There was half of the crowd was wearing Navy.
Yeah.
Like, it's getting through that layer of BS that every media outlet is feeding
Also,
us.
I don't want to talk about what color suit he wore at the funeral.
What does it matter?
I don't give a shit. I don't.
Right?
There
What
are
does
so
it
many
matter?
other things I care about that my family cares about right now
Yes.
that I don't want to be distracted by that. Like,
Yes.
let's
I care about
redirect
the
the
issues.
conversation and attention.
Yeah. Let's
So
talk about the
annoying.
issues. Let's talk about
Let's talk about the issues. It was like the whole thing that blew up with like Morgan Wallen on SNL. And to be honest, like I love Morgan Wallen music. I really do. Do I think he's a kind of a dick? Yeah, it sure seems like it. And throwing chairs off of roofs and bars, I don't condone.
Yeah.
But when all of the hullabaloo that happened after he just walked off the stage of SNL, I was like, what did you think you were going to get by inviting Morgan Wallen onto SNL? Why did you guys invite him then? Like,
Yeah.
I was like, I kept on reading the headlines at first, and I was like, did he do something else? Did something happen? And no, he just walked off. I was like, why are we talking about this?
Yeah.
Like,
well, you know what
why?
else I read about that? I read that they didn't treat him so hot that week. So that he was just kind of done.
He was kind of like goated.
I'm done with this New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm out of my element.
I'm done. Yeah. Which wouldn't surprise me they didn't treat him so well. I mean,
yeah.
You know, I
There's a
don't
lot
know.
more to the story. I'm sure there
Yeah,
was
there
stuff on
always
both
is.
sides, but yeah, they do. I mean, the media is going to spin a headline however they can
I
to get the
know.
clicks and the likes, and it's
I know.
disgusting and disappointing because it's like, listen, why don't you tell the truth?
Yeah, and also like, how do we come back from this? Like, how are we gonna? Is this what it is now? Like,
It is, but it's authentic conversations like this that
yeah.
pierce through that and say,
But
I'm
those
not-
authentic conversations don't happen enough. Like,
we don't see it enough. I think it
Yeah.
happens plenty. I think those conversations happen in garages over a 12-pack of beer, at the
Yeah.
pool hall, over dinners, with people who can have those conversations. And of course you have family members who you can't have those conversations with.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. And, I live in a very red state, and there's a lot of very red values in my family, including in myself. But I'm also not going to be chained to a party to follow blindly. I'm going to have my own opinion, and I will always have my own opinion, and nobody's going to tell me otherwise. But I'm also going to be open to other sides of the equation and listening to other opinions because, I think that there's an education in valuing others and having an open ear. Now you can listen and you can turn the other way when you're done and say, forget that.
Yeah, I still don't agree, but you can still have a conversation about it.
Yeah, and I think that's what we don't see enough of. I think it does happen. I don't think we see enough of it because that's just not a juicy headline. It doesn't get likes and clicks and views, and it's not controversial.
But one thing I really appreciate about you is, even though we might have some different political views and I might align a little bit more on the blue side, you still admit, you're like, yeah, I don't agree with that. I don't like that.
Yeah.
And just like I kind of do when I'm like, all right, what do you think about this? Because I'm hearing something in a different echo chamber. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, well, and you kind of give some context. In that context, I'm like, okay, I never thought about it like that way. Wow, I'm wrong. Or I can see why this would be a really good thing. I could see why this would, benefit our country or our state or the economy or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that, like, I've never had to question your values, and I don't think you've questioned mine because of it. Like, it's never a basis of that. Like, it's not grounded in that. It's grounded in.
Yeah, it's not about being wrong or right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's about understanding.
Yes.
And I think that's because it's really easy to point the finger at, Joe Biden and say, you screwed up the border. And it's really easy to point the finger at Trump and say these tariffs are going to cripple the economy. It's another thing to dive into that and maybe find out why they made those decisions. And you might find that you don't find a good answer. It's politics,
or that both sides are to blame in all of this.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and Congress gets away, not to get on our soapbox about politics, Congress gets away with a lot when you're pointing the fingers at the current president. And it's like
1,000%.
Did you know that they were the ones who had to pass it and put it on his desk in the first damn place?
Yeah.
You could point the finger at him all day long. And I'll defend every president because even if I don't like him or not, and I wasn't a huge Obama fan at all, but nothing he did outside of executive orders, but every president does executive orders, nothing he did outside of his executive orders could be solely his fault. Congress passed it.
Yes. Yes. 1,000%.
Congress passed it. So be mad at the 400-something people that you elected to go there because they're the ones doing the crazy stuff. The president's just signing off on it if he agrees with it at the end of the day. So
absolutely.
And all this stuff with Doge, I've been saying the same thing to some of my friends. Like, you're not understanding the other part of it. The other part of Doge is the fact that they've found all this money and they've canceled all these contracts and maybe they've let go of all these unnecessary employees and all this stuff. The problem is all of that is appropriated by Congress. So you can stop it, but in order to reutilize it and change it, Congress has to pass a law to do that. It's appropriated.
1,000%.
Once it's appropriated, it's law that it has to be used that way. So if you stop that, then the only way to use it differently is to pass a new law. So if people are mad about progress, well, where's all this money from Doge going? It's going nowhere because Congress has to act. That's blue, red or blue Congress. It doesn't matter. They have to act. That's how our country is built. And it's frustrating to hear that it's nothing. And you're like, what the heck? Yeah. What the heck?
I know.
It's frustrating. Well, how excited are you for you tomorrow?
I'm really excited. I don't know. you just never really know what to expect, I think. But
Yeah.
I'm really excited this time around because looking back on where I was when the Rising Order came out, it does feel so different because of like all of the people this time,
Mm-hmm.
like all of my friends who I feel like I get to share this with, who have made this journey less scary and isolating and lonely. And like, like you, man, what would I have done without you? I don't know. And
I'm
so I feel
proud
like
to be
that's
your
like a
friend.
celebration. So I'm
Yeah.
excited.
I'm honored to be your friend and to get to know you and to have gotten to read the early draft of this and to kind of hear
Oh,
about what you're going to do with it. And when we caught up at 𝐿TraCon and kind of talking about the next steps and,
yeah.
encouraging you to get there because it's a great story. I loved the first book and I loved the second book. I thought I think you're going to be impressed with yourself with the next project and what you're going to be able to do with your idea, because there's going to be, I think you're going to find yourself going, this isn't, I've done this before,
Yeah.
just in a different manner.
Yeah. I I feel a little bit like I feel like I'm hitting my stride a little bit, like I have my confidence in a different way. And also I just know that this is a marathon, and I know that there's still a lot ahead and there's still a lot to do.
Yeah.
And this is a long game that we're playing in this industry. And if you don't view it as such, you are not going to succeed, or you're
Yeah.
just going to give up or burn out or,
Yes.
from discouragement. So
Yeah.
I feel
So
like I
many
have
people
different
don't get there.
perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many people don't get there. So many people don't
Yeah.
finish that first book.
Yeah.
And then they don't get an agent or they don't see the publishing day, because it's just, they say for every 100 people who want to be an author, 10 of them actually make it to the finish line of a draft, and then less than half of that make it to finding an agent, and then less of half of that actually land a deal with like
deal.
a big five publisher. So
That's insane. That's like 1 out of 100.
if you think about it, publishing is entertainment. It's another form of entertainment. So what you're trying to do, if you're trying to be a New York Times bestseller, you're basically you're trying to be Tom Cruise. You're trying to be that guy that is Hollywood elite, that can demand the big money, demand the big attention and all that. You're trying to do that. How many actors fall short of doing that? Tons.
Right.
Tons
That
of
is
them.
so true.
So
Comparison.
I'm not saying you have to settle for being, a B-list actor or a C-list actor, but you have to decide for yourself, what's the goal? What's the end game? Is it publishing and getting your story out there for people to read and appreciate, or do you want to be Tom Cruise? Because you're going to have to put forth a different level of effort and have different expectations. I'm not saying people shouldn't shoot for being Tom Cruise and being a New York Times bestseller, but you've got to decide what's important, the story or the fame.
Yeah. And I think that the biggest thing that I've learned and seen from all of the people I've met and that we've met, and, that's another reason why I love going to conferences so much, is that everybody's journey is so different about how they get there and get to different places. And the number of people, for example, at 𝐿TraCon, who I spoke to, who I hate using the word failed, but who quote unquote failed, and then had to recreate themselves and their work and literally publish under new names, for example, like Alex Finlay and even Simon Gervais. Like, I mean, he like self-published or something, or his books, or like talking to him, like, it's crazy people's stories and how they've gotten to where they are. And the one thing is that they just didn't stop writing.
They didn't quit.
You just never know.
Yeah, they didn't quit. They never once said, this sucks. They said, I just got to get to the end. I got to make it to the finish line. And then I got to find the people who will appreciate it. Because there's people out there who will appreciate it. Like we were talking about earlier. There's women out there who really like spicy books. Yeah. There's plenty of people out there, people who you would not imagine, love that stuff. So it's
Yeah.
not that it's not doable. It's that you got to find the audience, and you got to put it in front of them. Say, hey, I'm new. Here's who I am. I hope you enjoy this. And you have to take that leap of faith, and that's hard. It's hard to put yourself out there and be judged.
I know. It really is. I don't think that part ever really gets easier, but you do develop a thicker skin, you know?
You have to. You have to. I mean, I've been called an idiot and different kinds of names just from doing this. You know?
Oh my God, really?
And I'm not trying to be Joe Rogan and have millions and millions of views and make $100 million off of Spotify. But I've had people jump into the comments and just flat out call me an idiot. You know, it's like, I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it to promote my friends and to help them have a platform. Like, I'm not even doing this for myself. So, you know, if you don't like it, don't listen. Like, I don't really care. You can call me an idiot all you want to. Like, but if that's what you have to do with your day is to go on YouTube and find people and then call them idiots in the comments, like,
God, it's so sad.
You're not living life, bro.
1,000%. Haters gonna hate, Jeff.
They are. Well, Claire, we've been at this for over an hour. I
knew this was gonna. It's almost been an hour and a half.
Yeah, you got little ones to take care of.
I know. Well, they're sleeping now. Justin took care of that one.
What a good guy.
I know.
What a good
Real
guy.
quick, are you going to New Orleans? Are you going to BoucherCon next year? Have you decided?
I don't think I am, because Shannon's got a conference that she has to go to at the exact same dates.
Oh,
so
okay.
I don't think I'm going to make it to either one of them this year, because we'll probably
You're not going to Thriller Fest either?
No, because we're going to be moving.
Oh, yeah. Did you guys sell your house?
We sold our house.
Okay, I hadn't asked you about that, because I know you obviously had, because it was on the market for just a hot sec.
Yeah, about 5 weeks before we closed the deal. So we're just waiting on a closing date now, and it's supposed to be the first or second week of June. So I'm like, no, there's no way.
Yeah,
There's no way I can make it to Thriller Fest. So, no, I won't make it to either one this year, unfortunately.
Okay, well, we can line up on maybe the next one.
Yeah.
That we can hit up. Because 2026, baby, that's going to be our year.
Yep. It's already, I'm hoping it's a busy year. For me, certainly, but I guess we'll see. So before I let you go, tell everybody where they can go find more about you and pick up a copy of The New Order.
Yes, you can find more about me at my website, www.claireisenthal.com. Just my first, my last name. And my social media handles are pretty much the exact same as well, just Claire Isenthal. And you can order a book wherever books are sold. You can order it from barnesandnoble.com. You can order it from Amazon. But I always encourage you to go to your local bookstores and place an order there.
Yes, go to your local bookstore and say, do you have The New Order by Claire Isenthal? And when they tell you no, judgmental looks are mandatory. And then order a copy and then tell them to order 5 to put on their shelves.
Yes, exactly. And it doesn't, like, authors don't really profit as much from books sold at independent bookstores. But I still think it's such a critical part of our ecosystem, you know, and
our community,
indie bookstores and to our communities. And I've gotten so much local exposure from the bookstores who have supported me. And so, dang, I am all about supporting them. And they're pretty, they're just such special places, cornerstones of our lives, you know. So.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. All right, folks, that was Claire Isenthal. Make sure you go pick up both of her books, not just the new one. Get both of them. And follow her on social media. She's a blast to follow. She's one of my best friends, and I know you guys are going to love this book. Claire, don't hang up. We're going to sign off from the live stream, but thank you all for listening, and I'll catch you next week.